Right, guys, when we're ready, we'll start with Rob Dorsett from Sky Sports.
Gareth, nice to see you. Only one place for us to start, really. England's all-time leading goal scorer has announced his international retirement. Can you give us an insight into how that conversation with Wayne Rooney went? We were told that you phoned him up and said you wanted him in the squad, and it ended that conversation with him saying he didn't want to play for England anymore. What can you fill in the gaps for us?
Yeah, of course. So I arranged or called Paul Stretford, who looks after Wayne, because Wayne was training, just to say, could we meet later on the day? And Paul didn't want to give me an indication of what Wayne's decision was. He wanted Wayne to relay that himself. So I called him to firm up the meeting, and he said that, look, appreciate you calling, but he'd been thinking long and hard about the decision, and he'd decided he was going to announce his international retirement. So, we then talked for another half an hour about, why I had been calling and the possible role I saw him fulfilling. Because I think as a manager, you always want to prod to see, has he thought about this decision, at length and understood all the ramifications of it. But he clearly had, and I totally understood his reasoning. I can see with him moving to Everton and the fresh opportunities he's got there, and he feels a sense of loyalty to the club for what they've invested in. So, so really that was it. I'm not. I definitely was thinking of including him in the squad. I think his form's been excellent. Thought there was a role that he could play for the squad, but by the same token, fully understand his rationale, and I think a good moment to recognise what an outstanding player he's been for England. I see some debate around, is he a legend or isn't he? Well, if you're the most capped outfield player and you're the record goal scorer, I'm not quite sure what else you have to do to be a legend. So he's been somebody that served England brilliantly and with enormous pride. And I know this was still a difficult decision for him, but I think I speak for everyone when I say, congratulate him on a fantastic international career.
Do you think, you mentioned there that some people perhaps have judged him not as he should have been judged in terms of his international career? Do you think that's been harsh? Do you think he deserved better?
Well, we're quite good at that in this country, aren't we? I go back to, I don't know, I guess the only other thing you could do is win something with international, and if we're judging it solely on that, then only the guys that won in 1966 are elevated to that status. But he's done everything else with England, captained his country for so long, and as I say, has represented his country with incredible pride, and has kept coming back even when there's been a lot of criticism towards him, and his level of performance has been outstanding. So I've got huge respect for him. I was fortunate enough to play with him, and then to manage him, and throughout what was a difficult period because of the decisions I was having to make, he accepted that with incredible humility, and the conversations with us were always very good, I've got to say, the football discussions and everything else. So he's been a pleasure to work with, and I'm sure at some point in the future there can be some involvement with England in some way in the future.
What do you mean by that? Do you mean potentially you'd have him along to still advise some of the youngsters, or do you think maybe as a coach or a manager going forward, he's going to be a future England manager? You've done it.
Well, I think there's, obviously some of that is decisions as to what he wants to do with his career. I think generally we're trying to engage former England players more than we have done in the past. Help them along their coaching pathway if that's the route they want to go. In the recent months we've had John Barnes come in and speak to the senior team. We've had other players speak to some of the junior teams. So I think it's important, that connection with former England players and what it's meant to them, that our young players get an insight into that.
Is this categorically the end of his international career? I'm thinking if circumstances change. If we paint the scenario where he's brilliant for Everton in the next 9 months or so, you get some injuries before the World Cup. Could you envisage a scenario where you go back, ring Wayne Rooney and say, we'd like you again to play for England?
I guess you've got to ask him that question, really. I had always said the door was open, and because of the way he played at the beginning of the season, and you could see he's in a really good frame of mind, that's why I made the call this time. So, I think that's a question you have to ask Wayne.
But you'd be prepared to ask him if you needed him?
Yeah, I've just done it. so you know, I don't see why you ever shut the door on anything with players, but in the end, you know, there are quite a few players out there who have decided they, you know, international football for whatever reasons, normally physical recovery at a certain age becomes uppermost in a lot of their minds. We've got quite a few players in a similar situation, really.
How will this England squad be different without him, do you think? I mean, every time we talk to you, even if Wayne Rooney hasn't been in the squad, there's always been a question about him. He's had this huge persona over this England squad. Will it be a different place without him?
Yeah, well, of course, in March and June, the squad have been together without him. So, in that sense, you know, these guys have got on with that, and I guess it's the opportunity now for us to look forward, look to the future. You can see by the squad we've named some younger players coming in who we've been looking at for a while. We want to see that. We've got to have an eye on developing the future. I did see the value of having some senior players around that, like the likes of Jermaine Defoe, for example, who can help, you know, nurture some younger players as well as play a part. But equally, we've got to look forward. You know, we've got development teams who've done brilliantly over the summer. You know, there is a depth of players coming through, and we've got to give them their head a bit. And I've got to balance that by getting, you know, results that help us to qualify. But also, I've got to look at the future and the exciting players we've got coming through.
Gareth, I have to ask you about a difficult situation for the FA involving your counterpart who's in charge of the women's team, Mark Sampson. Very serious allegations were levelled at him, racism and bullying. You know him. There has been some investigations that have found him not to have done anything wrong, we ought to point out. But you know him. Can you speak for his character?
Absolutely. You know, I think the reports that I've read, the independent report, has said the same. And you speak as you find. And, you know, Mark, in my view, is an excellent character. So I've no hesitation in saying that.
Following that up, Eni Aluko clearly said that she wants to draw a line under it, but Chelsea have commended her for speaking out. Kick It Out have demanded a wider independent investigation. Do you worry this might rumble on? Do we not think we've heard the end of it?
Well, look, I think it's clearly it's a really sensitive topic and a very serious one, and you know, hence there was an independent report, and I understand all of the speculation around it. I don't really think I can add anything further to that because, as you say, I don't think there's anything to add that without having been present or being involved in any of it. So really, I think the reports and comments that have been made stand as they are.
Bizarre that with this one, so the news comments, I'm not sure about the squad yet. This is a squad announcement. I need to ask you about Harry Maguire. I gather you were keen on signing him up for the June internationals, but then he got injured. What, have you been watching him for some time then? You've thought about this for some time? Yeah,
I thought his performances for Hull were very good. He's a defender that's very comfortable with the ball, and that's the profile of international football. I think he's already adjusted really well at Leicester to a new club, plays with great composure, can defend the ball in the box. So I think a really good opportunity for us to have a look at him, for him to get a feel of being around the senior squad, and we can assess how he goes in training and that sort of thing. So yeah, as you say, we were looking at him towards the end of last season, but he wasn't really fully fit at the end of the year.
And Nathaniel Chalobah as well, 96 appearances at youth level for England at the various age groups. He now gets his chance in the senior squad. He knows England, he knows the FA, he's come through the ranks. You're convinced he's ready for this step up? Yeah,
I think he's a player. Well, Nathaniel and Jordan, that's a nod to the summer, really. You know, they were our best two players in the under-21 championships. They also have great international experiences at various age groups. You know, Jordan went to an under-17s World Cup in Mexico, as did Nathaniel. Nathaniel, under-17s Euros winner. Incredible international experience. Started extremely well with Watford. So he deserves the opportunity, and although he's a young player and doesn't have a lot of Premier League experience, he's tactically intelligent player, and we've had a lot of opportunity to work with him, so know him inside out in terms of what he can bring. He's got good leadership qualities even though he's young. So sometimes you get experienced players in terms of age who don't necessarily display experience, and sometimes you have younger players who play with experience because they work the game out quite quickly. And yeah, it's a great opportunity for Nathaniel, and as you say, well deserved, as much as anything, for his commitment to England throughout.
Don't answer.
David Ornstein from the BBC. Do you now regret sort of dropping Wayne for the friendlies over the summer? Did that signal to him perhaps that it was the beginning of the end for him in your eyes?
No, I think you have to select players on form, and I took no pleasure from leaving Wayne out of any of the squads. They're the most difficult decision I've ever had to make, and the way that he responded to it was fantastic, I have to say. You know, I know in June I was asked, did I speak to him? Well, I didn't, but in March I went to visit him to explain why, and we spoke for over an hour and on all manner of different subjects. So I think the lines of communication have been good all the way through. His circumstances obviously changed with the move to Everton, and you know, that's clearly given him a lease of life, a hunger and appetite about his game. But also he's conscious of the recovery periods, and all being well they go through in the Europa League as well. So he's had a lot to consider, and you know, I think he goes out on a good note with England, and the comments and tributes today have been fantastic to read.
And you talk about the new lease of life. There was sort of widespread surprise yesterday. We didn't really see this coming, especially because he had always said that he was targeting the World Cup and that he would always be available for his country. So you must have been shocked to receive that call.
Not shocked, because I think all players, you know, I played with Alan Shearer at a time when he took a similar decision at this age, and you know, there's been other examples of that, and you do balance as a player what you feel you can give, and what's important for you, the commitment you have to your club. So I think there's a lot goes into a decision like that. I know it's not a decision that Wayne has taken lightly, and more than anything else because of his pride in playing for England. So yeah, I completely respect what he's done. I said to him he's earned the right to decide when he makes that decision and how he announces it and everything else. So yeah, I wish him the very best for the future. I'm sure he's going to have a very exciting season with Everton because they look very good as well.
Can you tell us what you plan to do on the captaincy front?
Well, I like the fact that we have been developing other leaders. I think that's important. I think maybe even more important with what's happened with Wayne's announcement this week, that we don't rush into something and put pressure on one individual. I think it's important that we spread the responsibility throughout the team. So I don't feel inclined to rush that. I think that's at the moment going in a good direction for us. Other people are having to take responsibility. And also, you know, I don't want people to think they're a captain and, you know, they're guaranteed a place in the team, because people have got to play well to stay in the team as well. So for me, it's more important we're developing a group of leaders and having shared responsibility.
Just to follow up on the Mark Sampson situation, you work here at St George's Park around Mark and around many of the players who have spoken out. Do you think there's a problem with the culture in the England setup?
Well, I've always spoken, I think, from when I took the job, about the importance of culture around the team. You know, I think that's crucially important that we have that right, in order that the atmosphere is right and that performance is enabled to be the best it possibly can. My feeling is that the culture is very good here. So I can't talk for specific camps or meetings or age groups that I've not involved with, but I sense that we're heading in a good direction with everything that's going on at St George's Park, and I think the summer was a really good example of that across the men's and the women's game.
And just finally from me, with so many sort of players and stakeholders in the game, even politicians, criticising the FA for not coming out and saying something subsequent of the latest allegations. Would you back calls for a further investigation into the FA, the guardians of the game, to clear this up for once and for all, because it's incredibly serious and unsavoury?
Well, I think everybody is fully aware of the seriousness of the subject, and there has been an independent inquiry, and there have been statements made. What happens from here on in is for other people at the FA to decide. I've obviously got my role here with the senior team, with senior men's team, and really I can't really add any more to that debate.
Gary?
Yeah, following on from that, in the last fortnight, coach has been reminded of the language to use. Has there been lessons learned?
Well, I think that's a really interesting subject because, if I look back at the way coaches dealt with me as a young player, and what's been deemed acceptable for coaches and what or for teachers or for parents, and the coaches I worked with using certain approaches got the best out of me, and for some people that's different to others. So I think it's a really difficult topic for all coaches. What's appropriate at different ages? Are there differences between the men's and the women's game in that approach? I think all of those questions are there and very difficult to answer. So having an understanding of your individual players is really important in that. And all coaches at various levels are going to use different techniques to try and get the best from the people they're working with. So, I think it's a really difficult subject.
Are there moves to put more rules in place or to investigate how that can be better understood?
I think we're always, although we're home with national teams here, we're also home with coach education in this country. And so seminars, coaching conferences, coaching courses, I think we're always looking at, what are the best ways to approach every sort of situation and every conversation that you have with players, with other coaches, with other members of your team, staff. So you're always looking to try and improve what you're doing and deliver to the best possible level. So I think every coach is always looking at that and assessing themselves.
Looking to Wayne Rooney, I think really quite a poignant moment when Pep Guardiola put his arm around Wayne after the game this week, because that just proves the standing he has with the world's best coaches when you talk about that legend.
Yeah, and I would imagine there was a real respect for the level of his performance in the game. He showed not only the level of his own performance, but the influence on some of the younger players in the team there as well. The little comments, the little nudges, the word in the ear at the right time, the ability to keep the ball when it was required and change the tempo of the game. So. In what was a very good team performance, you could see how key he had been in that, and I'm sure Pep had picked up on that from the side.
When you took over as the England manager, did you talk to him, and then was his big regret not winning a trophy?
Yeah, I think he's referred to that in his statement, hasn't he? I think for all England players, that's for everybody since 1966. That's the missing piece. But I don't necessarily think that is the determining factor into how we view his England career. Of course, we always want more. As players, we all finish, whether it's with club or country, wanting to have won one more medal or something further. But I think it's important we do acknowledge what Wayne has done and what he has given as well. And in my view, that's been in a really unselfish and humble way as well, and certainly in my period as manager, the humility he's shown around everything has been exceptional.
Look at Nathaniel. Did he speak to you about a move to Watford? Does the fact he'll be played more regularly as the hope strengthen his position as an England senior international?
He didn't talk to me about the specifics of going to Watford, but over 3 or 4 years I've worked with him, we've always talked about the importance of first team football. He's had some really varied experiences Some good, some not so good. Some were, he's been on a journey where the level of some of his performances on loans haven't been at the level we wanted, and others where he went to Napoli, hardly played, but as a life experience and as a learning experience tactically, it was a brilliant experience for him. So England has always been quite a big part of his development. 96 or so international caps. That's a significant chunk of the games he's played over the last few years. So that's been nice for us with Chelsea, that we feel we've played a big part in Nathaniel's development. But I think he gave a great quote after the Euros to explain why he had so many caps, because his commitment to England has been 100%, and he's always felt that as a big part of his life.
And Harry, a big addition to this team. You saw what he did against Arsenal, that magnificent opening day in the Premier League. Maturity beyond his years as well.
Well, he's come a different pathway. So we're talking about the experiences of Nathaniel, but very often with defenders they can mature a bit later, and maybe their chances in the team, particularly at centre-back, can come a bit later, and I think Harry's a good example of that. But I guess if you look back, even at Sheffield United, he was in a team that got to an FA Youth Cup final, so I think he's had a big influence right the way from there. And as I said, the particular appeal to me is his comfort in possession, which I think in international football is even more important. So he's playing in the Premier League with great composure, and the big occasions don't seem to faze him. So I think that augurs well for what we'll see in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll head through to the written briefing now.
Sorry, can I clarify just one more? I beg your pardon.
Yep.
Sorry, okay. I meant to ask about, obviously the transfer window is still open at the moment. Have you decided a policy, Gareth, on what happens during this time? Will players be allowed to talk to their agents? Will they be allowed to go if they need to go for medicals, that sort of thing?
Well, I think we'll need to be on a case-by-case basis, but the first thing at the beginning of the week will be to find out who has any ongoing situations and what support they might need with that. In the past, whether it's been with the senior team or with the under-21s, some players have had medicals here. So I'm very relaxed about that. I think as the week progresses, there then becomes a need for me to assess whether any ongoing discussions might distract a player from performance in the games. But in terms of how we would deal with it, I'm relaxed about it. It's part of the it's just strange timing given that we play on the 1st, so that's an unusual one. But it's a situation we can't affect, and I think we'll be able to deal with no problems.
Thanks everybody.